Oh, ego, you hating. Bud Crawford would beat Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez is washed. Why don't you want to see the fight? Baby, you want baby. I know that. And still, Boxing Ego remains undefeated with the talking points. The best in the business, and it's not even close. Now, listen. In this video, I'm going to break down Terence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. And this is an extension, a continuation of what I've been telling you guys on the channel. After watching the Crawford versus Madrimov fight, I do not have a shadow of doubt in my mind that I don't want to see Crawford versus Canelo. In fact, I've been telling you guys that. And the beautiful thing about my job as an online entrepreneur in this space, receipts. Your boy Ego always got the receipts. So the beautiful thing, and I love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. They say if you love what you do, it's like you never have to work a day in your life. I get to cover boxing on YouTube, get paid the big bucks, and the breadcrumbs are right there. So when I say these things, whether it's true or turns out to be true, or if it's proven false, I got to live with the results. And that's exactly what I'm prepared to do in this video. Boom, feast your eyes on this. This is 2 of the many videos I've made, and you guys see it. It says, don't want to see unpacked. I did a whole unpacked about Canelo versus Terence Crawford and the issues I have with the fight. This came out, as you guys can see on the screen, before Crawford even fought Madrimov. And then another video from over 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks, 13 days ago, Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford fight makes no sense. And it says, don't make sense on the thumbnail. So the boy Ego is right again. And I had the wherewithal. I'm many steps ahead of a lot of y'all, because I told you, a lot of boxing fans operate off emotion. When I give my breakdowns, I don't operate off emotion. Check out my post-fight breakdown of Crawford versus Madrimov. Listen, it was a solid fight. Wasn't a legendary fight. Wasn't a legendary card. All the things you guys were saying it was going to be. Crawford was bragging that they had flyers around, but they were giving away tickets and giving free tickets and telling people it's a free Eminem concert and all types of stuff like that. So to me, this thing was kind of a failure and a waste of money. The scale of it and what they tried to do with it, I didn't think it was executed well. In fact, the best fight on the card to me was Martin Bakole. He had a standout performance at the heavyweight division and put the game on notice, stopping an American talent undefeated at the time, Jared Big Baby Anderson. Jared Anderson, to his credit, Big Baby, he warred back after getting hurt and dropped in the first round against a much bigger guy physically. And he showed a lot of heart and was trying to put his punches together. He just couldn't keep the guy off of him. It's like this big tank, big bear, you know. And Martin Bakole, that was a very fun fight. In fact, I would put that, it reminded me of Ike Abeabuchi and versus David Tua type of fight. And that's a classic. So make sure you guys watch that. But I enjoyed the fight with Bakole and Anderson. Bar none, that was the best fight on the whole card for me. Best fight for sure. Crawford Madrimov, it was solid, but both guys were a bit too respectful, if that makes sense. They're a bit too respectful of each other, and no one like really grabbed the bull by the horns and was authoritative. So it made it for like a high-speed chess match, but a little too much of a high-speed chess match. Meaning, I don't mind that while you're filling out the opponent, testing the weight, testing the division. But if Crawford has received the praise that he's received and like #1 pound for pound, that's what people are saying, you would probably expect more from him. And when you're a great fighter or a great athlete, you're always going to be held to that higher standard because you're Kobe Bryant, you're LeBron James. So scoring 12 points, maybe that's good for someone else, but in the finals, you're Kobe or LeBron or something, people are going to expect a double-double or expect more rebounds. You know what I'm saying? Just a bigger game, or if you're Steph Curry or somebody. And I think that's the case here. So I don't know how much this fight really helped Terence Crawford. Furthermore, I will say this. I truly believe that the way the Madrimov fight played out, Crawford was trying to sell us on a Canelo fight. And he was trying to create some spacing and distancing from a guy like Jaron Boots Ennis. But based on what I've seen in that fight last night, he actually brought himself back down to reality and brought himself closer to what I've always told you. Jaron Boots Ennis and Crawford is an amazing fight at 47 or 54. I don't know if Bud can even make 47, so we'll just say 54, right? And to me, I was dead on the money, because if you look at fans and what people are saying now, it's starting to match what I've been telling you, as you guys see on the screen, that I didn't want to see the Canelo fight. Didn't make sense. Weight matters. I told you, I am old school when it comes to this boxing, and I am very consistent. I am not a fan of people treating this boxing game with any level of disrespect and treating it like it's a goddamn video game. Like this is a PS5 game and you could just pick whatever character you want. Chung Lee versus Zangief. Guess what? In the real world, Zangief would probably be too big for Chung Lee in most situations, you know, or Vega or whoever, you know. The weight matters. These things matter. People think this is a Rocky movie where, hit me, Drago! Like you could have Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, and he's fighting a 6'5", 6'6" guy that looks like he's in a different weight class, and then somehow Rocky can get beat up for 7-8 rounds or whatever, and then start to find success. In boxing, usually it doesn't work like that. And I think the fight that I cited earlier, Jared Anderson, Martin Bacoli, is an example of that in the real world. Somebody that big with heavy hands, and they're landing their shots and taking their time and picking their shots, got a bit more experience, you know, sparring the Anthony Joshuas and Daniel Dubois, and you're a young 24-year-old, inexperienced at that higher level, got hurt by Charles Martin. You've seen, it was very apparent to me, you're not going to be able to go 12 rounds taking these big shots from a much bigger person, you know? And I told you, there's a lot of content creators, YouTubers, TikTokers, or whatever, and they were pushing this Canelo is ducking Crawford. The thing boxing needs is accountability. You guys should be asking the tough questions, because when I say these things like the fight makes no sense, weight matters, don't disrespect the weight classes exist for a reason, you guys look like somebody pooped in your oatmeal, right? Like the stuff I was saying didn't make sense, and I'm on the front line suggesting this. Meanwhile, you have other content creators, and they're pushing this note that Canelo would be afraid of Crawford, and then Crawford post-fight with Madrimov, all he's talking about is how strong Madrimov was, and that it's a noticeable difference at 154 with the punching power. What on earth do you think, if you think that Madrimov is strong with 11 fights and 10 wins at 154, what do you think that Canelo is, and he's acclimated to 168 and even higher? He's even fought twice at 175, and he's stopping people that are great boxers like Caleb Plant, or at least hurting people that are much bigger like Caleb Plant and Jaime Munguia. And I think he'll beat Berlanga, to be honest. So the content creators that see, there's no accountability. You guys as fans should be asking these questions. You told me Crawford was ready for Canelo. Now the world has finally caught up to Boxing Ego and what I've always said, and it's seeming like what I have been saying make more sense, because the way I see it from Crawford Madrimov, 54 is looking like the ceiling for Terence Crawford. It is definitely looking like the ceiling because Madrimov, whether you had him losing, winning, or draw, I think it's safe to say the fight was close. Crawford did some good work. He had some sharp combinations, but he didn't look like the Superman Crawford that we've seen in the lighter divisions. And for me, a student of this boxing game, that makes sense. You're moving up in weight. You're adding on muscle. Maybe that muscle slows you down a hair. Maybe your power is more manageable because the guys are stronger, bigger, more durable. That's how the game goes. And this is what I've said from day one. Now, me being the best in the business, and it's not even close, I'm several steps ahead of the goofies that want to talk this boxing talk, but could never exist in my world with the supreme ultimate boxing talk. People are going to say stuff like, oh, but Canelo's no Madrimov. He doesn't fight the same way. Madrimov moves a lot. But that's at 154 and being inexperienced. This is a guy with 11 fights that's moving pretty good. And he gave Crawford everything that he could handle and something to think about. So that's at 54. Canelo's way up here at 68. And you can argue he doesn't have the same footwork. That makes sense. But he has good upper body movement. And he has 6 times the amount of fights, roughly, that Madrimov has. And he's been fighting since age 15. Plus, he's stronger than Madrimov. If anybody believes that Madrimov hits harder than Canelo at 68, then you're probably an idiot. Because Canelo was hurting Caleb Smith, who's like 6 foot something, at 168 after he left Golden Boy. And I think Canelo was coming off a layoff. Madrimov, I highly doubt that he would go up and knock out Kovalev at 175 or, you know, the Munguias of the world and things like that. He's not even the tallest guy and stuff. So what are we talking about? So these are some of my thoughts regarding Crawford Canelo. This is another day in the office for me. I've always said that Crawford's a talented fighter, but the whole theory that he can move up to 68 in one fell swoop, boom, and challenge Canelo sounded like a pipe dream. And Terence Crawford and Turki Al-Sheikh of Riyadh season, they were trying to force feed you these narratives about a fight with Canelo. Now I think the world gets the picture that, like, Turki legit said in an interview that he's sent an offer that Crawford has already agreed to fight Canelo Alvarez. And if Canelo knows what's good for him, he should take the fair offer. Who even wants to see the Crawford-Canelo fight when you went and had a decision fight with Madrimov, a guy that people didn't even know, which I told you guys, this is why I didn't like the fight for Terence Crawford. If he would have stayed and tried to work with Al Heyman and PBC and fought, let's say, like a Fundora, or, yeah, like, let's say a guy like Fundora. People at least know who Fundora is in America. How could you not? He's like 6'7", and he's this freakishly tall. So if you're a boxing head, you would know Fundora more than you would know probably Madrimov, because Madrimov didn't really get the exposure. So for me, this was more so an audition tape to show you Madrimov's skills more than learning anything new about Crawford. I already knew he had crispy combinations. I knew he had a mean streak. I knew he was a hell of a fighter. So I didn't really learn anything about Terence Crawford. If anything, this performance kind of hurt him, because although he won it and he did some sharp work, he kept his hands at home. He couldn't throw as many punches. He missed more punches than we're used to seeing, so his accuracy didn't look as high as it has been in the past. Put it this way, it was a downgrade to the Errol Spence performance, and I think we can all agree there. Errol Spence is like peak Crawford, 3 knockdowns, a stoppage, talking trash to Charlo in the ring, mid-fight, that was a classic look. But to follow it up with this, no bueno. And I don't think this was a good audition tape for Canelo and to show that you're ready for the Canelo fight. I mean, who wants to see that? Who wants to? I get it. It's two named people, but that doesn't mean it should happen because it's two named people. You just want to see anything because you're familiar with the name. And I don't think that's good boxing, and I don't think it's good for the sport of boxing. And I told you, like I've said from the beginning, I'm not a big fan of fights where it's just a built-in excuse already, and that's what it would be. For Canelo Crawford, I truly believe Crawford would have to be very evasive, run, and try to pot shot Canelo Alvarez, and then Canelo would have to try to like hunt him down, and it just wouldn't make for probably great TV because of such a high weight variance. Sometimes it's kind of reminds me of even like the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. It's kind of a forced fight because Mike Tyson's era was like the 80s and 90s, where Jake Paul might not have even been born at that particular point. And then now Jake Paul's doing his thing. And then now you're trying to combine Tyson's era at 60 or whatever age he is, 58 or whatever, to Jake Paul. And you're like trying to force the fight now, but they're really from two different eras. Now, it would have been something to behold if Jake Paul was around in 88 and, early 90s, and then they met. That would have been something else. But that's what I feel like this Canelo Crawford fight is. It's such a reach. It's such just a weird freak show fight that really doesn't need to happen. And I don't think enough of Crawford's better attributes presented themselves in the Madrimov fight to the point where that fight with Canelo even makes sense, where you have Turkey saying that we've sent Canelo an offer and he should take it. Why would he take it? Like, what does Crawford gain, or actually what does Canelo gain from a fight with Crawford? People just say he beat up on another small person like Jermell Charlo. And I said it, I meant it. Now I think the world is catching up. The other thing that needs to be considered is Canelo has a great chin. So if Crawford is unable to stop Madrimov, drop Madrimov, or really badly rock Madrimov, then what can he do 2 divisions higher than 54 with Canelo and Canelo's chin? Like, come on, bro. We literally watched this movie before with Jermell Charlo, and he was landing some shots in the first couple rounds, and he couldn't keep Canelo off of him. He couldn't hurt Canelo. That's why you don't play around with the weight classes. You have to, if you're moving up, you have to take it serious. Like Andre Ward. Andre Ward and Floyd Mayweather, I feel, are gold standards for boxing. If you want to model your career after someone in this new generation, it should be guys like Andre Ward and Floyd Mayweather. Floyd moved up, and they were deliberate moves up, and he planned on, making some noise in those divisions for the most part, right? Like when he moved up and fought DeMarcus Corley in his first fight. And the thing is, DeMarcus Corley, I believe he hurt Cotto. So he was more known than a Madrimov. I told you, this fight with Crawford, it really didn't do Crawford any favors. It was such a forced fight. It was, you have a headliner, and Crawford's not the biggest star like they try to sell you on, and neither is Madrimov. A lot of people, even lesser people, knew who he even was. So it was just really a weird fight to lead with. And they tried it. I think it was a failure. The experiment failed because it wasn't the best fight on the card. And if anything, it set Crawford back from when he was on PBC and he beat Errol Spence. When he beat Errol Spence, everyone liked how everything played out for the most part, right? The ring walk with Eminem was dope. You had Riyadh Season, Eddie Hearn, and Turkey. They tried to clout chase PBC and said, oh, everybody liked the Eminem ring walk that Crawford had on PBC, Premier Boxing Champions. So let's up the ante and give Eminem a mini concert. But then if you look on social media, people are complaining about the length of the show. It felt really bloated. It's like an 11-hour event. That's just boxing don't need all that. Just give us some good fights and a good memorable and let people be on their way. You gave Eminem a whole concert. Some people didn't know the songs. The crowd seemed dead, like they never even heard who Eminem was or something. I don't know what the age groups were. You're giving away free tickets. To me, it's a fail. It was such a reach. And Crawford is not the megastar that they hoped that he would be. All the money spent in LA for walking billboards and painting the staircases, and literally the top 3 fights, there were no knockdowns, no knockouts, and I think they underperformed. Pitbull Cruz, I expected more from him as a warrior. He literally looked pretty one-dimensional. Shout out to El Rayo, good game plan, but it wasn't the firefight that people expected. Andy Ruiz looked tired after 2 rounds, and he was just like throwing a few punches here and there, but he looked gassed throughout the whole fight. Terence Crawford, Madrimov was cool. There's some sparse moments of like heightened energy, but it just didn't look like typical Madrimov or typical Crawford, because I think both fighters paid each other too much respect. They respected each other's game, and Madrimov didn't want to make mistakes because he seen Crawford was a sharp puncher and had faster hands and could retaliate really quick. So Madrimov was a little bit apprehensive in spots, and Crawford was having problems because Madrimov was so fidgety and bouncing around with these weird feints, and he's bigger and he's strong, and it was a new weight class. So it just made for kind of a lackluster main event. I mean, you guys let me know what you feel, but nonetheless, Crawford versus Canelo, hopefully these conversations stop. I think it's such a force. It's been a force. It's been a reach to even see this fight. Crawford, he's done some good things in his career. He's definitely a Hall of Famer, but kill the noise, man. I don't want to see no Canelo Crawford. And Ego Stradamus strikes again. I told you Canelo should fight Benavidez, and I told you that Crawford should be fighting Boots. Crawford's team tried to tell you Boots wasn't ready, and Boots is not good enough to beat him. Maybe so. We have to see it, though. But this performance, mark these words down, I strongly believe that this performance brought Crawford versus Boots into more of a realistic realm than who Crawford has been calling out, which is Canelo. I think the Canelo fight looks very foolish at this point and very unrealistic, while the Boots fight is still there, especially if Boots comes up to 154, which I know he can do based on his size. So you guys let me know, do you want to see the Canelo Pele versus Bud Crawford fight, when Bud is being met with resistance and all he can handle from a guy with 11 fights? Let me know in the comment section immediately.